Happy Women's History Month from the How I Came Up team. This week we're going to celebrate Chiquita Howard-Bostic, an educator, an activist, a mentor, a mom, a wife, and just a competitive spirit. This is going to be a great interview. Now let's get to it. This is How I Came Up.
My name is Chiquita Howard-Bostic, and I am from Buffalo, New York. I think my childhood is really intricate, really detailed. Why? Because I probably didn't have one. I didn't have a childhood. I very early on took on the responsibility of raising my little brother and taking care of the household. And then shortly after that, I moved out very, very early, almost 17, and purchased a home and took care of my brother. So I did these things while working multiple jobs full time and going to school full time. And I became a little activist really early on. So what I mean by that is I remember going to Barbara Miller Williams' office in City Hall and telling her that I wanted to be a summer youth worker, but I had missed the deadline. And so I had decided that I was going to still work there. They figured out a way to get me a position in that office. And I continued to work through City Hall for years, since I was 14, and then I maybe on to being one of the youngest executive directors in the city of Buffalo until I was 21. So that's just kind of like a story of what happens kind of with me. I kind of decide that I want to do things, and then I just kind of take it and run with it. But my childhood was very complicated because in these journeys of trying to find mentors and trying to find, parents, I think, I reached out to community leaders, and so I became a mother, and I looked for mothers and fathers at the same time. Yeah. My first mentor was a woman who lived across the street from me, who made dolls. She would knit these little dolls, and then she would give the dolls to people. And she gave me this little doll, and she told me that I was beautiful like the doll, and she said that I would be able to do anything that I wanted to do, that I ever wanted to do. I went to an elementary school where I wasn't welcomed or accepted at this elementary school because I was a bad little girl who got in trouble all the time. I think I was angry. I was angry because I didn't have the things that other children had, and I would take my anger out, I think, on some of the other kids. And what was really interesting about that is that I was a smart little girl, that I could multitask. I could do 7 or 8 different things that an average kid would do, and I could get it done in the same amount of time. But I didn't have, other than this doll, I didn't have anybody to tell me, this is how you can process your ideas. This is the way that you maximize your potential. You are smart. You are capable. You're an intelligent young girl. You can do it. You can do anything. You don't have to be angry. You can be happy. You can be, you can love more of yourself. And so there wasn't that type of modeling early on. And the early on that I'm talking about right now is like 5th grade, 6th grade, around this time. And so keep in mind, this is around the same time as, my father was in federal prison, and my mother was struggling through a number of things. And I was relocated to my grandparents' home. I was relocated, and I felt kind of like just some toy or something, like the doll that you would take and sit here and put, just being displaced, being placed in all of these different pockets with people who really didn't prioritize nurturing me. I was an inconvenience, I think. And so from there, I began to enter all of these extracurricular activities. I joined the extracurricular activities because at my grandmother's house, you were locked in the house. So you weren't able to go off the porch. You weren't able to leave the room. You were locked out. And so I think about now how I harbor my daughter and how I try to keep her safe from all of these different things that could trouble her and things like that. And I realized that my grandmother was trying to do the same thing, because right across the street, there were dog fights, and there were, drug addicts, and there were alcoholics, and there were, amazing senior citizens who had wonderful gardens, and young girls saying poetry. I mean, there were so many things happening at the same time, but then just no guidance. So the only way that I could get out of the house is if I was, on a track team, or the drill team, or the chorus, or the student council, or the band. So I just joined everything. I joined everything I could, but I didn't like to lose. That was one thing. Like I hated losing. I don't like to lose. I do not like to lose at anything. And so I really didn't like to do anything if I wouldn't be like number one at it. And so every single thing that I tried to touch, I literally tried to be number one at it, even if I wouldn't sleep. And I think, if I think back, the reason why is because, I wanted the attention. I wanted the attention. I wanted somebody to love me, because I didn't know what that was. I didn't know, what does it mean for somebody to love you? I had no idea what that was, what that felt like. So I wanted these strangers, these absolute strangers that would be in the stands of the track team or wherever. I just wanted somebody to acknowledge that I existed, that I was a real person, a human being, And so, interestingly enough, there were some coaches. There was a gentleman, his name was Homer Platt. Homer Platt was amazing. He took these young African-American girls who could run. These girls could run. And he put us all on a team. And he took us to Canada, Toronto, Quebec, Montreal, and he paid for all of this out of his pocket. He told us that you all are beautiful African-American women, and you are of the most talented. He made us get our nails done. He made us do our hair. He made sure that we had like the perfect hygiene. He focused on, education, and he's just like, all of you have to have straight A's, and he worked us hard. I don't know if anybody knows of like the pyramid of running, where you have to run like a 100, 200, 300, 400, 400, 300, 200, 100. We had to do these things like over and over again, and we had to lift weights, and we were 14 years old, 15 years old. Homer, he made us work out and run until it's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock at night, I'm coming home having to start homework. Homer Platt taught me to be resilient. He taught me how to be resilient, and he also showed me that I was doing this for a reason, that I wasn't just running track to get out of the house. Like I was talented, like I had skills, I could do this. And so that was Homer, and that was great. And I also mentioned to you Barbara Miller Williams. Barbara Miller Williams was the Ellicott District Council person at the time. And so she started me off at City Hall, and then she introduced me to Antoine Thompson, who introduced me to Damone Smith, who introduced me to now Mayor Byron Brown. And Byron Brown was the Maston District Council member at the time. So I worked with him, and I worked with all of them all throughout high school. I worked part-time. And at some point I was working there just for free, just because I loved the energy. I loved the politics. I loved watching African-American people earn respect and do positive things for the community. And I think at that point, from watching Byron and watching Antoine, I said, well, this is something that I'm going to do. I'm going to be a community activist. I'm going to change stuff. I'm going to make things better. Most of all, I'm going to make things better for young girls. And so I think those were some really defining moments.
I'm joined by Benny the Butcher.
This is D from the Projects.
Rick G.
Dr. Kelly Lucci.
Hey, what's up? Mr. D. Wilson.
It's Michelle Biza.
Henri Star Muhammad.
TJ Iceberg.
This is how I came up.
This is how I came up.
And this is how I came up.
How you doing? My name is Sam Hill, host of How I Came Up. Do you have a success story that you would like to share with the world? If so, please go to skovutv.com and submit that story. and just maybe will allow you to share that story with the rest of the world.
You know, I tried to apply to the University of Hawaii, and my grandmother found the application, and she threw it out. But I could have gone to Hawaii. I want everybody to know that. I got accepted into the University of Hawaii, but apparently that wasn't going to happen. So instead, I went to Fredonia. When I went to Fredonia, I met this lady named Kathleen Bonds. Now, Kathleen Bonds, she was incredible. She was the director for the Education Opportunities Program, because I was in the Education Opportunities Program. I'm very proud of that. And she just mommied me, and she used to live upstairs from my grandmother in my grandmother's house. Her mother, Kathleen, and her mom lived there. So I guess Kathleen felt like, because my grandmother helped to nurture her in some type of way, that she was going to take responsibility for me while I was at Fredonia. Well, Kathleen sat me down and she said, you know, Quita, you got a 4.0 GPA. You know you're eligible for an academic scholarship. So I quit the track team the next day. I'm gonna tell you, I was done. I said, what am I running for? What am I doing this for? Because all of these years I was running, not because I really loved to run. I was running because I was running away. I was running away from Buffalo. I was trying to get away so that I could experience something. I needed to find me. I needed to find what could make me happy and not be responsible for, my family, be responsible for all of these people. But when I was at Fredonia, there was an incident. There was a cross burning outside of my dorm. And during that time, I think this was in 1996, it was like unheard of. It was so scary. And so Kathleen made sure that I could transfer to UB. She sent me back home. But she sent me back home. They accepted me into the EOP program in Buffalo. They helped me to get an apartment and everything so that I could be settled. And that was that. I was going to go home, and then I got back to the same situation. Took my brother away from my mom's house because it was not good for him. And from there, I just started my life in Buffalo. I started my life as an activist. I was a young activist. I went to school full time. I did 21 to 24 credit hours a semester. I worked multiple fellowships at the same time. So typically I worked a 40-hour week. Then I also waitressed part-time, and then I had about 21 some odd credit hours. And I stayed on the dean's list. And every class that I took, I became connected or aligned with the faculty member in some type of way. So they honed certain skills, and they made sure that I would develop, especially in the English program. So I learned to be a grant writer really early on. So I began writing grants for community-based organizations and not earning any money for myself, just writing grants and just getting them money to do different programs. I wasn't very confident. I wasn't confident in my skills still. I was very, very, very insecure because I still didn't believe I could do it. I still didn't have that person to say, you can do it, until I met a woman named Peggy Romano. Peggy Romano, she has an organization called Shintele. And so Peggy Romano was my first white mentor, this woman. And so I had an issue a little bit with white people in general, because when I was at my elementary school, I had, this experience with the 5th grade teacher. And it's probably not fair to say her name, but I know what it is. But anyway, created this relationship where I wouldn't let the white women in because this woman hated me. She hated everything about me, this teacher. She most of all hated that I believe that I understood all of the homework and that I could complete it so quickly. And she didn't like me to ask questions. I wasn't allowed to participate. And so I remember that, and that hurt me, that upset me. And because it was such an immediate experience, I think I just disconnected myself from white women. So back to Peggy Romano. So Peggy Romano comes in, and at this time, I am the executive director for Fillmore Leroy Area Residence, Flair, which is on Leroy Avenue in Buffalo, New York. And so I think I was 22. So I'm sure that I was the youngest executive director in the city at that time. And Peggy came in and she wanted to do a program where she talked about 40 developmental assets. And she wanted to take young people who had resided in urban communities, sort of like where I grew up, where I came up. And she wanted to help them to understand how valuable they are. And she wanted them to understand what their immediate assets were, and for them to learn to empower themselves from the inside out. And as Peggy Romano spoke, these were all of the things that I needed somebody to tell me when I was, that age, when I was 13, when I was 14, all of the things that Peggy had to provide and to share with those children, that was the asset development that was missing in my life. For somebody to say, wait a minute, sit down for a second. Before you try to move forward in this, let's evaluate and reevaluate your skill set. What is your skill set? What are you capable of doing? And how can you utilize this skill set to help you to navigate the world around you?
Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic, the 2021 recipient of the Governor's Living the Dream Award, is a person who best exemplifies all of the characteristics of justice, scholarship, sharing of self, human and civil rights, and advocacy of peace.
Right now, I am the Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity at Shepherd University. I have been teaching as a professor in academia for 13 years. And I started off as a chairperson instantly. I was hired in my first position as a department chair. And then I got a new position at Shepherd and then within 2 years I became department chair again. The point that I'm making here is, in any position that I'm in, somebody elevates me to be the leader in some type of way, or I elevate myself to be a leader in some type of way. I really enjoy engaging the leadership skills that were provided to me, along the way. So all of these mentors and people that I communicate with you about, those people who empowered me, they taught me certain things, and I value those things, and I like to bring them to the table in any way I can. So in my role as Associate Vice President, I am also the department chair of Sociology, Criminology, and Criminal Justice. So I have two jobs at the university right now, department chair and associate vice president. It is my responsibility to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusivity throughout the entire university structure, whether it is strategic plans, departments, student affairs, HR, the whole gamut. But also as department chair, I'm also a faculty member, and I teach social inequality. I teach criminal justice courses, juvenile delinquency, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna be the president of somebody's university at some point. So that's my goal. I think for me, I wouldn't have anything if it weren't for God, because when I look at the progression, all of these different experiences, all the people who came into my life at all of these interesting times, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, my friends, they laugh all the time. They're like, oh my goodness, these stories in your life, you can write a book about this because you can't make it up. God has carried me this whole way. I have no idea how I came from being this little girl who was kicked off of the school bus, for fighting on the corner of Fillmore Avenue, to an associate vice president at a university. The odds were all against me. Every odd against me. Drugged, parents, community, lack of support, all of these different things. But God has always been there. I've always been able to pray, and it always works. And, I think the best thing that has ever happened to me is for me to be a mother, right? Because I've been able to kind of look back and reflect upon just all the things that I had or I did not have as a child. And so I'm able to become a better person and to help my daughter to become a better person because I can fill in those gaps. And I guess live vicariously through my daughter. All these trips and different things we get to go on that I never got to go on. I can say, oh, I'm doing this for my kid, when I know I really just want to go to that place. Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic, and this is how I came up.
What is your name and where are you from? Hello, my name is Sam Hill. I'm the host of How I Came Up. How I Came Up is a platform for our entrepreneurs and professionals to share their successes and their struggles. And hopefully they'll give us some tips to success. Now let's get to it. This is how I came up.